Hi everybody, welcome back to Mando Lessons. This is part two in I guess it's a series. I kind of ran out of time on the first video on putting out some information about setting up your mandolin so it sounds and plays its best. In the first video, I talked about setting the action, how high the strings are off the fretboard, and how to get your instrument intonation proper so that it plays in tune up the neck and doesn't go out of tune as you go higher up. So if you're looking for that information, that's in part one. In part two, I'm going to talk about a couple other things that can help get your instrument a little more in tune, a little more easy to play. But really, the action and the intonation are two of the biggest sort of things, and they're very doable on your own as long as you work slowly and with care. You can do that work yourself. Some of the stuff I'll talk about in this part of the video might be easier done by a professional repair person who does a lot of this work and is less likely to damage your instrument. So one thing that these instruments can be very prone to is getting buzzes. And there's something that fretted instrument players come to sort of dread. If you get a buzz in your instrument, it might sound... I don't have any buzzes on my instrument currently, thankfully, but I'll see if I can get, like... That's the sound you're trying to avoid. Something that where you get this, it just doesn't sound right, and the tone of the instrument is compromised in some way. Now there's a bunch of ways this can happen. One, like I talked about in the last video, your action can be too low, and so you raise the bridge like I talked about in the last video, and that'll sort it right out. Another option is that your nut, which I also talked about in the last video, your nut is too low and it's buzzing over the first fret. So if you're hitting a note and getting a buzz without fretting a note, but then those buzzes go away as you fret up the instrument, that could mean that your nut is the culprit. Another thing that can create a buzz is if your fingerboard on the neck of the instrument isn't perfectly flat, and it has some concave or convex quality to it. That can create a high spot in the fretboard or a low spot in the fretboard, so that you start getting sort of notes that don't sound right when you fret them. And that's more of a job for a professional repair person, because sometimes you can sort of like heat treat the neck and straighten it out, or take out the frets and plane down the fingerboard, or put a new fingerboard on. But that's a much larger project than just adjusting the bridge or the action or the intonation. Some instruments also have truss rods, which you can't see, but there's a truss rod cover here that gives you access to a metal bar inside the instrument that you can adjust to sort of change if your neck's a little concave, it'll flatten it out. That is doable by, you're welcome to give that a try. I tend to leave it very well alone and not mess with the truss rod unless I'm in a very dire circumstance and not near a repair person. My instrument's totally, if the neck's totally out of whack, then I'm gonna mess with it. But if it's something where I can take it to a repair person, I personally am more comfortable having a repair person do some of that work for me. Also, as you play the instrument more, the frets will start to wear down, and they'll start to get little grooves in them. And if those grooves get deep enough, then you can also start getting buzzes in that way. And sometimes the frets, due to humidity or other factors, will start to like pop out of the little slots that they're in. That can also create buzzing. Bridge height, I'm reading off my notes, so I might repeat some things. The bridge height, the nut height, the sort of the warp of the neck. Sometimes it can be a really simple, a warped neck is about as bad as it gets, but it can also be as simple as getting some sort of buzz from behind the bridge closer to the tailpiece. This instrument has little kind of dampening rubber bits down under the tailpiece cover. Some people I used to put a strap of leather, a little like piece of leather, and weave it into my strings to sort of cut down on some of those extra vibrations, and that can get rid of some buzzing. You can also get buzzing up here if something's sort of getting in the way, or sometimes you'll have loose tuning machines, like if one of the tuning machine heads gets loose and starts coming off, it'll vibrate when you play a string. And those are fairly easily fixable because, it's not the neck getting out of warp, which is kind of a serious problem. It just requires dampening it some way, a piece of leather or some rubber. I know some folks will sell like rubber grommets that you stick in between your strings that stop that vibration. So it can be, and also one of the ones that always gets me is having a tuner on the instrument. Sometimes I'll play a note and it'll vibrate the tuner and sound like a buzz in the instrument. And that's the easiest of all to fix. You just take the tuner off when you're done tuning, and when you want to start playing, that's the quickest and easiest fix there is. So it can be simple, it can be quite complex. If you feel out of your comfort zone, take it to a skilled repair person. And some things on the instrument just wear out. The frets will wear out. Sort of being subjected to constant changes in humidity will warp the wood. And things will just slowly change over time. You've got a little box that's under a lot of tension from a lot of different strings and sort of weather factors and all sorts of things kind of go into it. But ultimately, every once in a while, your instrument might need a little bit of a setup, and you can either undertake some of that yourself. If you're interested in learning more about setting up instruments, I recommend checking out, there's a great website called frets.com, or you can check out the Mandolin Cafe forum. There's a builders and repair section. And there's lots of information on the internet. Or if you're more comfortable spending a modest amount of money, for a good setup, unless there's something really wrong with your instrument, it'll probably it could cost as low as $20, as much as $100. But I think what I always tell my students is, a $300 instrument that you've put a $100 setup into to really play its best is going to play easier and sound better than a $10,000 instrument that doesn't have that setup to make it sort of sound and play its best. So really a setup is one of the biggest investments, or most worthwhile investments you can put into your instrument, just because the easier it plays and the better it sounds, the more you'll want to play and the better you'll get and the more practice you'll put into it. If you're interested more, check out things on the internet. I've got a little more information over at mandolessons.com, as well as a bunch of more musical lessons. If you have major questions, take it to a repair person with a good reputation. And other than that, just have fun playing, and feel free to adjust the action and the intonation like I was talking about in the last video. If you do any repair work, just take it slow and thoughtfully, and you'll be just fine. So thanks for watching. I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.